First off, folks, welcome to the Art of Balancing Cloud and On-Prem Deployments. As John said, my name is James Chatmas, and I'm thrilled to be here with you all today. Now, before I really jump into the meat of the topic here, small confession for you all. So I'm not just a solutions architect at Octopus Deploy, kind of an Octopus super fan as well. And before I was lucky enough to join this team, I was, and I still am, a longtime user of Octopus Deploy in previous roles. And just like I'm sure a lot of you on the call, I wrestled with the challenges that we're going to be looking at here today. So with that, let's take a look at our agenda. We'll get through these slides fairly quickly, so we have as much time as possible with the hands-on portion looking at Octopus. But real quick through the agenda, we're going to take a look at some of the challenges of hybrid deployment environments. We'll describe how Octopus can help with those challenges. And then we're going to move to the fun part of the presentation, where I'm going to show you how Octopus can address the challenges. And I frame that as a day in the life of a deployment. And as John said, feel free to ask any questions along the way. All right, so to set the stage, before we look at some of the challenges, let's talk through what these hybrid deployment landscapes look like. So if we distill it down into kind of simplest terms, a hybrid deployment refers to the use of both on-premise as well as public or private cloud resources for hosting or managing your applications. And that definition can mean different things depending on who you are and where you work. Maybe you're at a financial institution. You may have core banking systems living in an on-premise data center for regulatory reasons, and then maybe your customer-facing apps like the online banking are hosted out in the cloud. Maybe we're talking about healthcare. Patient data needs to be stored, securely in a private cloud, and then we have analytics processing, which need massive resources hosted out in the public cloud. Or maybe we're talking about, something different altogether. Maybe your organization has their dev QA environments on premise while you have production out in the public cloud because, scalability and speed. Regardless, whatever scenario you're working with in regards to a hybrid deployment, these landscapes typically quite difficult to navigate and come with a whole host of challenges. So with that, what are some of the challenges we're going to look at today? So on my team at Octopus, we talk to DevOps teams at organizations of all sizes, basically daily about their CI/CD pipelines. And one of the most common challenges we see in hybrid deployments is this issue of having a disjointed CI/CD pipeline. So when deployments are split between cloud and on-prem, it's quite easy to end up with a fragmented process, fragmented pipelines that are essentially going to slow down delivery and will likely lead to more errors and a lot of frustration. We may have for example, a team using Jenkins for building and deploying on-prem, barely getting by, and we brought in a new cloud team. They're hosting their app in Azure App Services, and they've decided to use a completely different tool for CI and CD altogether. Works great for their scenario, but doesn't quite do a great job with the on-prem side of things. Now things get messy. Management of the pipeline is difficult, and on top of that, now we're stuck managing multiple tools for our deployments. Not really an ideal setup. Another challenge that we see constantly with teams working through is managing kind of inconsistencies between our different hosting environments. So let's take an ASP.NET application, for example. Deploying that app to your load balance servers sitting in a data center probably looks quite a bit different than the deployment process for putting that out an AWS Elastic Beanstalk, for example. Even though we're talking about a single application, deploying to these different environments has different configurations, different quirks, and different processes altogether. And for the third challenge, I know this will be, I'm positive this will be someone's favorite challenge, complex security and compliance. So now we're not only dealing with juggling different processes and tools, but on top of that, now we have to adhere to different sets of rules for each of those deployments. Maybe there's security standards and protocols that are way more restricting for your private cloud, or maybe compliance is in the mix now, and we have different environments under different regulatory jurisdictions. Long story short, all of these challenges create, solution sprawl, slow deployments, reliability issues, and ultimately lead to lost time and money for an organization. It's pretty clear that managing these hybrid deployments can be, a somewhat daunting task, but it's not an unclimbable mountain, and the solution lies in Octopus Deploy. Octopus Deploy can standardize, simplify, and really bring harmony to your complex deployments and bring it all together under one application. So let's take a look real quick how Octopus is going to help solve these common issues. So one of the key strengths of Octopus Deploy is its extensibility. We've framed it here as a way to help with those disjointed CI/CD pipelines. Octopus is designed to integrate seamlessly with your existing DevOps toolchain and processes. So whether you're using, GitHub Actions or Jenkins or TeamCity or Azure DevOps or Cruise Control, any other CI server, Octopus Deploy can fit right in and take those build artifacts and get them deployed out consistently to any portion of your hybrid environment. Flexibility. Octopus is quite flexible, and it's really a game changer that helps alleviate the issues that come with inconsistent deployment environments. Because Octopus is able to deploy to basically any of your infrastructure, regardless of the technology, we can centralize our deployments into one single tool and create processes that cater to the specific needs of each environment. And number 3, how can Octopus help us reduce risk around compliance and security? Octopus Deploy has a slew, quite a bit of built-in security features that help reduce security and compliance complexity, from role-based access control, audit logging, guardrails such as approval steps and gated environments. We're going to look at all of that today and show you how Octopus helps with that reduction of risk. So we've set the stage, defined the challenges. Let's get into the meat of it. So 60-second slide here. Quick look at the pipeline that we're going to be working with today. So the application we're working with is OctoPetShop. It's a fictional online pet retail store. So the pipeline is as such. We have our developer that's made the code change. That code gets checked into GitHub. GitHub Actions, when that code is checked in, GitHub Actions is going to take over. We're going to take the OctoPetShop code and we're going to build both Docker containers and NuGet packages from that same code repo. We're pushing our containers to Docker Hub and the NuGet packages to our Octopus built-in repo. And GitHub Actions is also going to push our build information and then ultimately kick off our deployments to our development and QA environments. Octopus from there is going to take that same code or those same code changes and deploy it out to the cloud. We're going to AKS today, and we're also deploying to hosted Windows servers running IIS. So essentially what you'll see is a enterprise level developer experience where you have a seamless flow that is completely hands off from the moment that that pull request is merged all the way through that change being put out into our different development environments. So, like I mentioned, we decided we're going to frame this as a day in the life of a deployment. What does that mean? Usually a deployment, once we get to the deployment, that has started with some sort of request for change, right? Someone says, hey, I want this bug fixed. Hey, I want this enhancement made, add this new feature. And essentially it goes from that request to the developer writing the code and then a lot of steps in between where it ultimately makes it out to production. Grossly oversimplified, but I think we all kind of agree on that general pattern, right? And that's what we're gonna do here with part one. So in part one of this presentation, we're gonna look at how Octopus Deploy's extensibility can help with a disjointed CI/CD pipeline. We're gonna merge our pull request, build with GitHub Actions, push our build information and artifacts, and then automatically trigger our deployments out to our dev and QA environments. So I'm going to hop over to our GitHub tab. This is the code base for OctoPetShop. And essentially for this presentation, we're going to start exactly where our developer would be in this journey. We're starting in GitHub. So our code change has been made. We conveniently have the pull request ready to merge. It's been reviewed. It's passed all its checks. So let's go ahead and kick the process off and get things running. Perfect. So that's merged. I'm going to switch over to our Actions tab. And we can see we have two GitHub Actions workflows that automatically started running. They both kicked off simultaneously with different build processes. So you can see we have our CI process for our NuGet packages and for our containers. So real quick, I'll hop into the containers process and let's take a look at the workflow file, show you how simple the implementation is of these Octopus Deploy actions. So up top, we have the standard, our build and push to Docker Hub. Everything is kind of bog standard up top. And then we have our two Octopus actions down on the bottom. Very simple implementation here. So you'll see in this first one, we're pushing build information. We essentially need to provide GitHub Actions with a few variables and tell it, hey, these are the packages I want my build information associated with. That's like the check-in comments and build metadata and similar. And then underneath that, we have our create Octopus release action. And this is kind of where all the magic happens. This is where that link between GitHub Actions and Octopus Deploy comes to life. So we've set up Octopus to automatically deploy out to our development and QA environments as soon as a new release is created. So we'll see here shortly that once this step runs, that's going to immediately bring us to our deployment running in Octopus. So I'm going to switch over now to our Octopus Deploy tab. Here we are on the Octopus Deploy dashboard. Plenty of existing users with us today, but for those of you that are brand new, Octopus dashboard is really the main entry point into the application. And I like to compare it to kind of your air traffic control tower for all of your deployments. It's a actually quite powerful high-level overview of all of our deployments and their status. So at first glance, it seems simple. We have a list of our projects down the left, and then our environments across the top. Our projects in Octopus, they can be a deployment of an entire monolithic application, which we have here for our IIS project, or a project in Octopus can represent a piece of an application or a microservice. So we have the flexibility to deploy any of these microservices discretely for an individual update. And we can also see that we have this orchestration project. We can run that when we want to do a full rollout of all the pieces or for the entire application. And then looking at the dashboard, probably stating the obvious here, we can easily see the status of the latest version that has been deployed to each environment and kind of how it's running. So kind of relating this back to our challenge of a disjointed CI/CD pipeline, you can see we're looking at our dashboard and Octopus is deploying out to our different environments in a centralized location so we can manage and monitor them from all, kind of one spot. So as you can see, the spinning wheels on the dashboard, Octopus is running, it's deploying our application. I can click on any of these and it's going to bring me to our task summary screen. Real quick, high-level overview of our deployment, and I can click on our task log tab easily see the live console output of each step as it's running. And these task logs stored with the release, come back and view them historically, perfect for debugging. So we'll head back to the dashboard. We'll let these finish. Our orchestration project is running through our project suite. And then we'll switch back over to our slides. So what did we just see? I just showed you an example of how extensible Octopus Deploy is with our GitHub Actions integration. And again, so we're clear, Octopus can be extended to work with any of the other, build tools, artifact repositories, and similar in your DevOps tool chain. We also saw our deployments automatically kick off to our cloud environment as well as our on-prem using the single tool, which has effectively solved the disjointed pipeline challenge that we talked about earlier. So moving along to part 2, we're going to take a look at how the flexibility of Octopus really helps solve the challenge that we talked about earlier of inconsistent deployment environments. So we're going to do this. We're going to look at creating a single deployment process across all our environments using scoping and variables. We'll look at how we define the steps for our deployment using the step template library, and then we'll take a quick look at our configuration as code feature. That gives users the flexibility to manage the deployment process outside of Octopus.
James, I'm just going to interrupt you for a second. I apologize. Yeah. Disrupt your flow. You're doing great.
You're good. Great. You're good.
We have some questions we just want to answer while folks are asking them. So I'll just highlight them here. So one example is Louis asks, does the integration of Octopus with GitHub Actions allow for callbacks for incremental builds and single branch builds plus tests without deploy for PRs? So basically, when initializing some of the actions that we have, so we have 10 actions in the GitHub marketplace today. Some of them will actually return what's called a server task, which is basically like, yeah, we're doing work on Octopus. Just go about your business, and we'll come back, at some point with a resolution. So there are ways in which you can interact with GitHub Actions. We have this server task ID, as I mentioned before, that will return that you can query. But if you're using it from a callback mechanism, there are a number of ways to get involved in that process. James, did you have anything you want to add?
No, I was actually going to hand this question off to you with being the actions expert here.
That's all good. So we'll mark that as answered. We've got another question here from Mary who asks, does Octopus deploy from the build machine? Does Octopus deploy? That's the trouble. Does it deploy from the build machine to the target, or does Octopus direct the build machine tentacle to push the code to the target? And asking for firewall setup and can't find this answer. I can help with this. We've recently just enabled standard ports for tentacle, so you can do it over standard ports, which is 443. Before, it would have to be 10943, but now we've just added this feature in the latest version of Octopus. That's one thing. Octopus typically will issue deploy steps through a explicit deploy action. So you'll do things like create release, deploy release, etc. And those will be actions that those will be, I don't want to misuse my terminology here. If I use the term action, people assume GitHub action, but let's call it a job or whatever, a task. Sure. Whenever you're doing, because CI servers vary, right? You've got TeamCity, you've got Circle CI, you've got GitLab, you've got GitHub. They vary from the way in which they do work. And so if you're performing work, then you can issue those commands through those integrations that we have support for. So you can deploy, deploy a step command basically to Octopus to say, go ahead and create release. But typically it's the artifacts that you're really most concerned with. So it's the artifacts of the binaries that you generate, etc. And those are called packages. And those are when you push those up to Octopus, those are the things that you're going to distribute. Sorry, James, this is your webinar. Let me defer to you.
Oh, you're good. You want to add? Good. Love it. Love the extra input. And just everything you said sounds great for Mary's question. Just to add on to that, typically the build artifacts end up in some sort of package repository, whether we're talking about, Artifactory, Docker Hub, or Octopus's built-in repo. When you do a deployment, Octopus grabs the package from wherever it's stored, whichever repo it's in, and will transfer it to the target machine or to the worker to run those scripts. So for
another question we have here from, another question we have here from Louis. Does it offer seamless integration with third-party artifact repositories? Yes. There is a set of integrations that we have there. You can find that in our docs. So we'll just mark that answered. And then I answered this one previously, but what version of Config as Code fully supported? We shipped this. Config as Code was implemented in March of 2002. So, sorry, 2022. What am I saying? Sorry, it's early for me. 2002. So last year we shipped Config as Code support, and that support continues to evolve as we evolve the product. Sorry, I think those are all the questions. All right, James, back to you. I'll leave the stage. Thanks, folks.
No, don't go, John. Perfect. So glad we got some of those answered. Where were we? Part 2, talking about the flexibility of Octopus Deploy. So we're looking at our IIS deployment project. One of the kind of fundamental concepts of Octopus is an extension of the well-known DevOps principle: build once, deploy anywhere. With Octopus, your deployment process is defined once, and that single process is used for deploying across all of your environments. So what does that get us? We get consistency across all of the different stages of our product lifecycle. We reduce the risk of deployment errors, and we should ultimately create a high level of confidence for teams when it comes time to deploy to production. How does it do that? So as we're deploying our changes through the different environments remember that single process, we're by proxy testing and hardening the process itself along the way. So when we're ready to deploy to production, that process has been vetted. And again, we should have a very high level of confidence when finally deploying out to our production environment. And this is all accomplished because, of course, Octopus is so flexible. So let's look at kind of some of the ways we can accomplish that. So let's hop over. I'm going to click on our process page over here on the left, and it'll bring us to our process overview screen. We can see how simple it is to define your deployment in a step-by-step manner. If we take a closer look, looking at some of the steps here, you can see that we have certain ones set to only run on certain environments. So, for example, we have step 1 is to notify the stakeholders that our production deployment has started. Likely wouldn't need to run this and notify all the product stakeholders every time we do a deployment to our dev or QA environments, for example. And if you follow the pattern, you can see we have a few more steps that are scoped to individual environments. And just to make it a little more clear, we can filter these steps by environment. So we can see exactly which ones run for wherever we're deploying. So following a similar pattern, let's hop over. I'm going to click on the variables page over here again on the left side towards the bottom. So you can see, I'll kind of scroll down through here. At the top, you see our left column is the variable name. Middle column contains one or more values for the variable, and then we have our scoping column here on the right. A number of variables in this project we've scoped per environment, so different values depending on where the deployment is going. And with that, that's how Octopus is able to handle those kind of inconsistencies across hybrid deployment targets and environments. So heading back to our process here on the left, we're going to quickly add a step to show you some additional flexibility. So up here in the upper right, you'll see the Add Step button that I'm going to click on. And that's going to take us to our process editor and step template library. Now, if you aren't familiar, the step template library contains a large collection of predefined steps that can be used in any deployment process. So we have our built-in steps that really cover kind of the most common deployment tasks and scenarios. So, basic Windows deployments. We have built-in step templates for Azure, AWS, Terraform, Docker, Kubernetes, all the usual suspects that you would typically see on a day-to-day deployment scenario. On top of that, you'll notice here at the lower right, we have a community steps button. We have a quite robust community step template library that we're all very proud of, close to 500 templates. And these have all been created by Octopus employees, but most of them by vendors and customers alike. They're meant to help simplify, your deployment tasks. And I'll just kind of slowly scroll through this as I'm chatting, and kind of going back to our flexibility theme. It's quite clear we can see the breadth and depth of technologies that Octopus can interact with here. And just to clarify, these step templates are not just static, one-size-fits-all solutions to, a deployment task. Each of them can be customized and tailored for the exact specific needs of your organization. On top of that, if you can't find a step template that quite works for what you're trying to accomplish, you also have the option to create your own and share either within your team and your organization or even the wider Octopus Deploy community. So the last piece of this second segment regarding Octopus Deploy's flexibility, on top of what we've already looked at, is Octopus's powerful configuration as code feature. So I'm going to switch tabs again to our other GitHub tab. And you can see here, this is where our deployment process code is being stored directly in Git. So by defining our deployment processes code, what does that get us? So we unlock the ability to version control and manage the steps in our deployment, just like the code for your application. So not only do you have the flexibility to update and manage the process in the UI, which we just looked at, but now we have the flexibility to create pull requests, create branches, we can revert changes, all of the good things that come with Git. So recapping part 2 in our day of the life, I just showed you Octopus Deploy's flexibility, how that helps with inconsistent deployment environments. We looked at a single deployment process for all environments, which we can accomplish with scoping steps and variables. And we also saw the flexibility Octopus has for defining our deployment with the extensive step template library that has steps covering basically every possible scenario. And then finally, we looked at configuration as code, how that makes it simple and flexible to manage our deployment processes. John, you're back.
More questions. I feel like
Love
a
it.
DJ. All right. Ravi asks, is there a way to combine these step templates to call as one macro step? So basically to squish them all together and just be like, I want to call just one of these things and have it do everything.
Yeah, good question, Ravi. Right now, kind of a step template itself is by definition, a single step. So what we've seen kind of as a pattern in the past is you can create maybe a deployment process that has a set number of steps that you want always run together. And then you can call that entire deployment process from another project. So kind of one way of handling that. Awesome.
Marcos asks, what's the best approach to different deployment steps for on-prem and for on cloud? For cloud, deployment tags or variables. For example, with cloud, deploy to Azure app, service on-prem, deploy to IaaS. I guess it's kind of an it depends sort of answer here. So
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So I didn't get into roles in the last segment. Wasn't planning on it, but let me switch over to Octopus real quick.
a live demo. I like it. All right.
Yeah, we'll do it. We'll do it live.
We'll do it live.
So Marcos, as you can see for each of these steps, or for a lot of the steps, we have a role set up. So that role defines the machine type that this step is going to run against. So in your example, let's see, for deploy to Azure, app services, and deploy to IaaS, what we would do is we'd have all of our steps in this single process, and then we would scope the different, our Azure app service steps. We would scope those to potentially a different role, but two different environments. So when we're deploying to dev, we're only going to run those development steps that are deploying to IaaS, and then finally in production, we'll be skipping those steps that are scoped to dev and QA and running those production ones.
We have another question here from Robbie. Another good question. When an OCL file is used, can we restrict from which branch release we can be go to prod environment, like restricting only main branch OCL file can be used to deploy to production? I think you're missing a couple words in there. I'm not sure, but so basically, when we're using OCL, we're using config as code. Can we restrict which branch release we can go to prod environment with, like restricting only main branch? I would assume it depends on your CI environment, right? So you're going to have certain branch protection rules. Like if I think of GitHub, for example, which has this notion of branch protection rules, you're going to have to restrict certain workflows to key off based off of certain events running. Everything keys off of the CI process. Let's remember that, right? So, and then from there, you'll utilize packages for deployment. But once you pass control over to Octopus, we're going to assume like your build is done. You have artifacts ready to go. You uploaded your packages. Here we go. Did you have anything to add to that, James?
Yeah, it's kind of on top of that. You could set up branches of your OCL files to correspond to potentially different channels in Octopus. I have a bunch of follow-up questions, so this might be a good one. If this person wants to email us, we can give a more extensive answer there.
Great point. Yeah, great point. All right, cool. All right, I will now leave the stage. Back to you.
Perfect. And kind of moving along finally to part 3. We're going to take a look in this last part how Octopus Deploy helps reduce risk when dealing with those increased security and compliance complexities that we talked about. So I'm going to show you how we can reduce that risk with progressive deliveries. We'll show an on-prem Windows deployment with blue-green, style deployment and leveraging runbooks. Real quick, for those of you who aren't familiar with runbooks, unique feature to Octopus Deploy, it allows teams to automate day 2 type operations. So deployments are kind of day 1, getting your application out there, and runbooks automate any of the supporting operations to keep your app running. Maybe switching a load balancer or restarting an app pool, for example. Then we're going to look at the automation of our change management process with gated environments. Let's say we need a rubber stamp approval before anything goes to production. That's where our ServiceNow integration comes into play so that we have that auditability and traceability. We'll look at RBAC, our role-based access control, allowing good changes to happen and preventing unwanted changes, and how granular we can get with those. And then we'll wrap it up. Hopefully that all makes sense. So let's hop back into Octopus again and start with that progressive delivery. So hop into our IAS project again here. Our production is environment, like I said, set up in a blue-green pattern. And just real quick, just in case, blue-green is when you have two identical versions of our production environment running, and there's some sort of load balancer in front of both of them, directing traffic to one of the two live environments. And then from there, deploy to the other server. You can verify the code changes, approve everything without any, production traffic going to it. And then once it's all signed off, you can switch the load balancer and switch the traffic to that new version. So I want to show you how we can do that with Octopus here now, but there is a slight problem. I'm logged in as Octopus, this instance, as a developer, and unfortunately, developers don't have access to production. And this kind of ties back to Octopus's RBAC. So I've been logged in as a developer for the entire presentation so far, and I've been able to perform all the tasks you've seen me do. But we have these guardrails in place. We're preventing actions that we don't want, such as having a dev deploy directly to prod. And guardrails like this are one of the ways that Octopus helps reduce risk in your hybrid environments. So we're still going to show it. Let's sign out real quick here. And I'll sign back in as an admin. So heading back to our IIS project again, you can see now we have our deploy buttons available for our blue and green environments because of the permissions we have. So we have our latest release is in production blue. So or our previous release in production blue, we're going to deploy our latest one to the green environment. So the deploy overview screen, a few settings we won't get into today, but I'm going to click on my green deploy button here in the upper right. The deployment's going to pause automatically. I do have a manual intervention step as kind of the first step here. I'll just assign it to me real quick. Good to go. And allow it to proceed. So once this gets going, let's pretend that the deployment goes through. We've had a day or two to test it and get all the approvals needed. So how do we get our traffic to hit that server with the latest version? How can we make that happen? Well, we won't have to wait on another team. We won't have to wait on a ticket from IT to make the switch. We're going to leverage Octopus Deploy's Operation Runbooks functionality. So let this proceed, and that'll continue through the steps. So over on the left, kind of in the middle here, you'll see runbooks under operations here. And we have one runbook for this project, and it's for swapping our production load balancer. Now I'll click on it, and then I'm going to click on process here at the top. Just real quick, fairly simple process here, but brought you here to point out that we have access to the same step templates and step template library that we do for our deployment process. So let's go ahead and run our runbook here. We can select the environment we want it to run against. We'll go blue and click run. Again, we're going to have another manual intervention step that pauses it. So we'll get this going. Go. So that's running. Quick call out. How is this helping reduce risk with operations runbooks? We've automated the process first off. So we have no risk of typos or logging into the wrong server. The process is defined and it's run the same way each time. Also point out our deployment risk has been significantly lower because we've essentially empowered others outside of IT to execute everyday tasks, as it were. But we've done so without having to give out, login credentials and IP addresses or whatever else is needed to make the update to that load balancer. Those details are living in Octopus. They're masked in the database and are used exclusively at runtime by the runbook. So back to our overview page, tying this back to reducing risk. By leveraging our progressive deployment patterns in Octopus, we should end up with a very high confidence in our deployment rollout, better testing, less downtime, and the ability to identify issues early. And all of those that I just mentioned, critical for a hybrid environment, that has sensitive data and large workloads. I'm going to head back to the dashboard and kind of tying things up, going back to complex security and compliance. We're going to wrap up here today showing gated environments and our ServiceNow integration. So we just deployed, we saw to our production on-prem, but as I mentioned earlier, it's not at all uncommon for different deployment environments to have different regulatory rules. For our cloud environment, all of our production deployments need to have an approver or an approval paper trail in ServiceNow. So typically, it can be a quite long and drawn out process getting that ticket created. But Octopus has really made it a streamlined and pain-free process. So let's head to our orchestration project. And again, we're just going to kick off our latest release, deploying out to production. So again, release overview screen. You'll notice we have an extra field here. So we have the option here to enter an existing ServiceNow ticket number if one already exists, and Octopus will check that, the status of it before the deployment continues. But for today's presentation, I'm going to leave that blank, and I'm going to go ahead and click deploy here in the upper right again. So what we should see and what we will see, the deployment was immediately paused and nothing happened. And we have a link directly into ServiceNow with the ticket that Octopus automatically created at deploy time for us. So we'll click on the link, share this tab so y'all can see what I'm working with. And I'm just going to quickly approve this kind of in the background. So while I'm doing this, how does an integration like this reduce risk? So we've essentially removed a number of risks. The risk of a deployment going out without the required approvals. We've streamlined the change order process. This was all created automatically by Octopus when the deployment started. And we're making sure the deployment stays compliant with whatever policies you have at your company. So it is approved now. What I'll do is I'm going to switch over to the Octopus tab for sharing, and we can watch it. Back to my ServiceNow tab, I'll hit the final button. And what we should see is Octopus knows about the approval of the change request, and as soon as it detects that here, we should see it continue with the rollout and the full deployment of our entire application. So that covers the formal presentation for today. Just a real quick recap what we saw and a quick summary. So we defined 3 common challenges of deploying out to hybrid hosting environments, and we saw how Octopus can help solve each of those challenges. So Octopus deploys extensibility, really helps with disjointed CI/CD pipelines. And we saw that by looking at our GitHub Actions integration, talking about our other build server integrations, and watching that hybrid deployment to both on-prem and cloud servers. We then looked at how Octopus deploys flexibility, really helps with inconsistent deployment environments by taking a look at our step template, and scoping, as well as config as code. And then we just wrapped up with seeing how Octopus Deploy reduces risk in situations with increased security, with progressive delivery, our RBAC, and our ITSM integration with ServiceNow. So with that, John, are you there?
I am here.
He's
the
back.
Internet is still. James, thanks a lot. That was awesome. So stick around, folks. If you have any questions, we'll get through them right now. So Marcy had asked here, or Jira, I'm assuming integration with Jira. Yes, we do support
That's
Jira.
right.
So if you're looking to reconcile deployments with issues, meaning you want to see traceability from Octopus back to Jira in terms of your deployments, we support that. And that's something that you can definitely take advantage of. Luis asks, can I select the status of the ticket that I want to have for letting the process continue? So this is ServiceNow integration, I'm assuming, where you're utilizing it as the arbiter of control relative to deployments. And so we key off of approved statuses. James, sorry, I'm taking over the webinar.
No, you're good. You're good. Keep going.
Oh, that's all I had to say, basically. But
that's it. That's right. And just to add to that, you have the ability to define a custom workflow for the ServiceNow integration.
All right, cool. Dylan here asks, can I auto-populate CI on change ticket? Not sure what specifically you want to do here, Dylan, but I'm assuming maybe values in ServiceNow from CI, or on change ticket. Sorry. So you want to go back the other way. You want to go from the ticket back to your CI server. It's configuration item. Sorry, CI. Terms. Sorry. Dylan has given us an explanation of what CI means. CI to me will always mean configuration, continuous integration.
Yes.
But configuration item. Sorry, my apologies. I'm not speaking the ServiceNow lingo. There you go. So can you auto-populate the configuration item on a change ticket?
Yeah. So when Octopus creates that ticket at deploy time, it's gonna populate a few fields. It'll set the priority, risk, and impact based on the template you're using, and the short description will be populated with the project name, the version number, and the environment that is getting released out to.
All right. Got a couple of questions here from Louis. Can I select the status of a ticket that I want to have for letting the process continue? Did we answer this one? I'm not sure if we did. Sounds similar to the previous one. Okay.
Yeah.
Apologies. I'm just firing through the questions here. So besides waiting for approval of the ticket, can I update the status of the ticket back into ServiceNow?
Right. So right now, it does not do that automatically at the end of a deployment. Right. And Ryan chimed in.
Yes, Ryan's one of the members of our teams at Octopus. He's saying implementing is what Octopus looks for.
That's right.
So there you go. There's a key off of that. So I guess that answers that question there. And I think we've answered all the questions. We are at the edge of our time. So James, thanks a lot. I think you deserve a few emojis for your presentation. Thanks for doing the presentation.
It's a pleasure.
Amazing. Look at all the emojis. There we go. Awesome. All right.
Love it.
Yep. So folks, if you want, you can sign up for the next webinar we have coming up. It's later at the end of the month. That's our community town hall. We'll have folks like James and others attending that, answering your questions. So feel free to sign up today. And with that, I would like to thank you all for attending our webinar. It was great to see you all, and we'll definitely see you on the next one. So take care, everyone, and we'll wrap things up here. Thanks again.